This is Alex Ansary letting the Portland, Oregon audience know that this is the last edition of Outside the Box TV, the weekly series. I'm going to be turning my attention towards a video project. What you're about to see in this last edition of OTBTV, number 352, edited on June 24th, 2015, what you're about to see are clips that are going to be featured in my documentary film, which deals with the World War III conspiracy. So the next thing that you see from me will be the documentary film, which will air on cable access in a couple of months. You can follow my work at my websites. Without further ado, here's a rough cut of what will eventually be a documentary film. Take care and enjoy.
The Great Wall is no longer a wall dividing China from the rest of the world, but it is a reminder of the fact that there are many walls still existing in the world which divide nations and peoples. The Great Wall is also a reminder that for almost a generation there has been a wall between the People's Republic of China and the United States of America. In these past 4 days, we have begun the long process of removing that wall between us. We began our talks recognizing that we have great differences, but we are determined that those differences not prevent us from living together in peace. You believe deeply in your system, and we believe just as deeply in our system. It is not our common beliefs that have brought us together here, but our common interests and our common hopes. The interest that each of us has to maintain our independence and the security of our peoples, and the hope that each of us has to build a new world order in which nations and peoples with different systems and different values can live together in peace, respecting one another while disagreeing with one another, letting history rather than the battlefield be the judge of their different ideas.
During 1981 and 1982, Ronald Reagan personally signed authorizations for the U.S. Export-Import Bank to finance nuclear steam turbines for communist Romania and power generation equipment and a steel plant for communist China. Tens of millions of U.S. taxpayers' dollars are being provided for the industrialization of these red tyrannies. Also, Reagan administration officials announced plans to sell arms to Red China. They told anti-communist businessmen in El Salvador that the U.S. would oppose efforts by any anti-communist Salvadorans to gain control of their country. And these same administration officials refused to honor a pledge to supply free Chinese on Taiwan with the fighter planes deemed necessary by the Chinese for defense.
The communists never would have come to power in China had it not been for the globalists. The Roosevelt administration was full of a lot of communists, including Alger Hiss, who was fingered by Whittaker Chamber, who was also a communist and said he was a member. But the establishment somehow always defended to the very death Alger Hiss. It is my opinion that Alger Hiss, in fact, was a globalist, that he went in, joined the Communist Party to help facilitate, because he was very high in the Roosevelt, to facilitate the other communists coming in to that. And we know that during the Roosevelt administration, Harry Dexter White and other communists, including Alger Hiss, helped facilitate much of the theft of critical technology materials that went to Russia in World War II. In Major Jordan's diary, he was the major in charge of the Lend-Lease base in Montana, the air base. He stopped the Russians from loading onto their airplane a lot of sealed cases that were sealed with diplomatic immunity. And they were acting very suspicious. He stopped, he opened the boxes, which he wasn't supposed to, but he did anyway on a hunch, and he found they were full of the plans for the nuclear bombs. And he immediately confiscated the material. He called the White House for further instructions, and he was told, you are to close those boxes back up, give them to the Russians. He says, but they would contain nuclear plans. And he says, we don't care whether, you are to give them to the Russians and not tell anyone about this. He later found out that they were also shipping the first nuclear material, enriched uranium, to Russia to facilitate their exploding the first bomb. So you see, here we have a future enemy that the U.S., in the name of Lend-Lease, is in fact giving our top-notch technology to. The same thing happened in Cuba. We undercut Batista militarily. The CIA, through Black Ops, got arms to Castro. We brought Castro to power.
It should be noted that this is not the first time in history that we've noticed this type of phenomenon. And in fact, even within the past century, we noticed very, very similar, analogous, one would almost say template or prototypical examples of this very phenomenon, as identified by a researcher who I have name-checked a number of times on this podcast in the past, so I certainly hope my regular listeners will be familiar with his work already. I am referring, of course, to Anthony C. Sudden, the author of such trade books as Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, Wall Street and FDR, but also the author of many scholarly publications, academic publications that were published under the auspices of the Hoover Institute in the 1970s and that have been well-regarded scholarly works that were even name-checked by the likes of Zbigniew Brzezinski as being convincing proof of the thesis that these books were forwarding. And that thesis revolved around the idea that in the case of, for example, the Bolshevik Revolution or the rise of the Nazis, that it was the Western powers, specifically the financial center of Wall Street and the Wall Street bankers, who were helping to fund their supposed arch enemies, the socialists of various stripes, whether that be the Bolsheviks or the National Socialists in Germany, for their own agenda purposes.
Dr. Sutton, you wrote 3 series of books while you were a research fellow at the Hoover Institute. Can you give me basically the background of the content of these series?
Yes, the series I wrote at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University concerned the transfers of Western technology to the Soviet Union, and essentially it comprised 3 individual books. Each book covers a period of time since 1917.
And then you wrote a second series of books on Wall Street.
Yes, these were trade books. In other words, they're not academic books. They're written for the general public. They concerned the build-up of the 3 types of socialism: Bolshevik socialism in Russia, what we might call welfare socialism in the United States, and Hitlerian or National Socialism. And each book examines the financing and the contributions made by Wall Street, by international bankers, to the development of that specific form of socialism.
But the obvious question here is, why? Why on earth would these crony capitalists be funding their erstwhile, supposed, nominal, arch-nemesis rival enemies, their sworn enemies, the socialists? These are directly contradictory ideologies and viewpoints and economic systems. Why on earth would the capitalists be supporting the socialists in various countries? This seems completely nonsensical if we look at it from that, again, 2-dimensional, surface-level reality. But if we extend this out again to the 3-dimensional hierarchical reality, we start to realize that there are agendas that can be served by the crony capitalists supporting command and control economical structures and political authoritarian structures in various countries.
Just tell us all over again why.
Why?
Just tell
You won't
it
find
again.
this in the textbooks. Why is to bring about, I suspect, a plan to control world society in which you and I won't find the freedoms to believe and think and do as we believe.
But these power brokers actually envision at that time a one-world government that would be socialist?
Yes. The second statement I made was that they did not want the Soviet Union to develop into another free enterprise society, and that this would offset it. Aiding the revolution would offset this event. That was made as a statement in 1919. You have various books, one by Gillette, the razor blade Gillette, called The City, I think it was, which laid out this corporate socialism for the world to see as early as, 1905, 1910. So around the turn of the century, you begin to see actually written statements by these internationalist businessmen of the kind of socialist empire they wanted to bring about. It's there, but these books, of course, are not included in your courses in political science and history at the regular universities.
Of Asia against America. They've been around a long time. They have an adequate understanding of their importance. What we need is, rather than to say, let us fix the immediate currency problem,
right,
is to have some general discussion of where the world economy will be going and what we all have to do over a period of time. How do we handle the question of proliferation in a long-term sense? And I'm quite optimistic because the Chinese, in my opinion, have concluded that they need a long period of cooperation with the United States for their own development. We have concluded that we have enough problems in the world without taking on confrontations with China. So the tone of what both sides are saying is extremely positive. So we are starting from a rather strong position. We have a lot of huge problems. We have the nuclear problem in Korea. We have the nuclear problem in Iran. We have, of course, the whole array of problems, each of which, Afghanistan, and so forth. But then we have the financial issues. But they really are issues of the construction of a new world order. That's what this is about. And that's the sort of dialogue the Chinese are generally good at. And so a partnership between us is essential. A conflict between us is going to exhaust us both in tactical exercises that cannot be conclusive.
And the New World Order could satisfy both.
It has to satisfy both, because otherwise it will lead to tensions that will exhaust us both.
One of the elements of where they want to take the world is a third world war, which they wish to involve Europe, the United States, and Canada, North America, and Russia and China. I was told by insiders in the 1990s in America that the plan was to lead to a conflict involving China. For this reason, in the 1800s, letters were written, and particularly one particular letter, between two high-level players in the secret society network, in which the three world wars were described of where they were going to go. And this letter included the detail of countries that would be involved and how it would be started. And it described the First World War, with the Germans brought into conflict with the rest of Europe and America. It described the Second World War in the same terms and said it would lead to a Jewish state in Israel. And the Third World War would be triggered out of the Middle East, involving Israel as the trigger, and would bring about the final global conflict which would lead to them being able to offer the solution to stop this ever happening again, which would be a world government and a single world army. And the idea of that is to say, if we have a single world army and we bring an end to national armies, then we can't ever again have a war. What they won't tell you is those that have manipulated the war will be the same people that offer the solution to the war, which is exactly the structure of control that they want. And I feel very strongly that Georgia, I'm not saying this war's going to happen tomorrow, but Georgia was a move on the chessboard in this direction.
Hitler and Stalin's crimes are now part of history. But the communist Chinese system of evil is not content with racking up the highest death toll in history. The mass murder and enslavement is still going on today and enjoys the full support and sanction of the New World Order.
摄像机拍下的这个画面，同西方某些国家的宣传恰恰相反，正好说明了我们的军队。
Communist China serves as a globalist laboratory, a proving ground where 1.4 billion people live out their lives as guinea pigs who serve as test subjects for the formulation of the brave new world. U.S. and British forces worked closely with Mao Zedong during World War II, and at the end of the war, they secretly backed Mao in driving out Chiang Kai-shek and the Nationalist. The OSS, and then the CIA, believed that Mao would have a stabilizing effect. Bill Clinton's mentor and Georgetown University political science professor Carol Quigley explained in his book, Tragedy and Hope, how the Anglo-American Roundtable groups backed every brand of authoritarianism, from communism to fascism, to ensure that a centralized government dominates the population and the economy as planned. The elite are monopoly men. They seek to create monopolies and dominate populations through the barrel of a gun. In their writings, the leadership of the New World Order has continuously heaped praise on the corrupt communist Chinese model. In August of 1973, in an article written by David Rockefeller for the New York Times, Rockefeller openly lauds and endorses Mao Zedong's actions, while celebrating their command and control system.
Whatever the price of the Chinese Revolution, it has obviously succeeded not only in producing more efficient and dedicated administration, but also in fostering high morale and community of purpose. The social experiment in China under Chairman Mao's leadership is one of the most important and successful in history. David Rockefeller, New York Times, August 10, 1973.
Communist China is the model planned society for the New World Order. China has received more United Nations awards for its policies and form of governance than any other nation. In the eyes of globalist planners, authoritarian China is the future. China adopted the dreaded one-child policy due to lobbying from a consortium of eugenics organizations, which includes Planned Parenthood and the United Nations. Couples that have more than one child face heavy fines and imprisonment. The practice of forced abortion in China, coupled with the cultural desire to have a male child, has plunged China into a deepening crisis where there are 30 million more men than women. The Chinese police state ruthlessly crushes all forms of dissent. Underground churches, Falun Gong practitioners, striking factory workers are all sent to forced labor camps. Their blood and tissue types are cataloged in preparation for organ harvesting. The Chinese government then sells the prisoners' organs to the highest bidder on the world market. If a wealthy patient chooses to fly into China, the prisoner is killed and the organs are implanted. If the organs are being flown out of the country, a mobile execution van extracts the organs on the way to the waiting aircraft. The social engineers of China aggressively euthanize the elderly and disabled. China is merely following the globalist blueprint for the world. The same system of total dehumanization is quietly being phased in worldwide.
Depopulation should be the highest priority of foreign policy towards the Third World. Henry Kissinger, 1974.
Following a disputed election and a tie vote, the U.S. Congress installs the most unpopular president in U.S. history as David Jefferson Adams becomes the 44th President of the United States. Shortly after the election, increased unrest, rioting, and a growing number of militias have given rise to ever-increasing domestic terrorism. In response, the President invokes the Homeland Security Act and declares martial law on the West Coast and other areas of the country. Though highly contested, a Supreme Court ruling sidesteps the electoral process, disqualifying popular presidential candidates from several states. Public outrage explodes when a sham election leads to incumbent David Adams accepting a second term in office. During the 57th Inauguration Day ceremonies, Washington, D.C. is struck by a low-yield nuclear weapon, killing David Adams and most of the U.S. Congress. The destruction of Washington, D.C. effectively breaks the chain of succession, sending the nation into chaos. In an emergency vote, the European Union deploys peacekeepers in the greater D.C. area to secure international interests. With separatist sentiment rising, California's governor declares home rule and secedes from the Union. Texas follows quickly and declares sovereignty, taking neighboring states with them and forming the Republic of Texas. Now, the once United States of America lie in ruin. The time for words has passed, and a second American Civil War now erupts as 7 factions wage war across the land. They battle one another to reclaim a nation, to restore peace, to rebuild this shattered union.
Welcome back. Here's a new Chinese video game that has made America sit up and take note, because here the enemy is the US Army and gamers shoot US soldiers. And let's say this shouldn't surprise Americans, because until now American games blatantly painted Middle Eastern people as enemy and once even shot the Cuban leader Fidel Castro.
This is the game the Chinese army uses to recruit soldiers. At par with games like Call of Duty and Homefront, the Glorious Mission has a perspective a whole lot different than other shooters. It targets US troops. That's right, developed by China's giant network technology company and backed by the People's Liberation Army, Glorious Mission's first-person shooter paints US soldiers as the enemy. Ironically, it's supposed to be modeled after the US Army-made shooter game America's Army. Analysts say the game is as acceptable as games like Homefront and the Call of Duty series that have Eastern Asian or Middle Eastern people shown as enemies. Critics worry that this game leads to confusion between military thinking and simulation. However, this is not the first shooter to create controversy in recent times. The 2010 hit Call of Duty Black Ops sparked an outrage with Cuban authorities, where a certain mission depicted the assassination of Fidel Castro.
Сегодня на американской военной базе Форт Карсон в штате Колорадо слышна русская речь. Впервые со времен Второй мировой войны русские и американские десантники выполняют общую боевую задачу, пока учебную. 22 бойца ВДВ России, столько же спецназовцев США вместе должны отразить условную атаку международных террористов. Евгений Зубков о том, как голубые и зеленые береты учатся воевать против общего врага.
Уилл. Меня зовут Уилл.
Главному герою культовой киносаги Джону Рэмбо, наверное, даже в самом жутком кошмаре не могло присниться, что он будет жить бок о бок с десантниками из Подмосковья. Но современные зеленые береты на военной базе Форт Карсон в штате Колорадо даже рады такому знакомству.
Сегодня поистине знаменательный день. Мы начинаем совместные военные учения с воздушно-десантными войсками.
К отрогам скалистых гор приехали 22 российских бойца, разместились вместе с американцами в казарме, больше напоминающей пятизвездочный отель. Хорошая мебель, бытовая техника, всюду кондиционеры и кофемашины. Общий язык нашли быстро, получая обмундирование, по ходу попрактиковались в английском. Дружно по-армейски сходили на обед. Столовая в духе ресторанов системы «Все включено». За $5 богатый шведский стол. На первый взгляд не служба, а рай. Местное меню, впрочем, десантников разочаровало. У американцев нет привычного для россиян первого, а никакое мороженое с фруктами и газировкой щей, как ни крути, не заменит. После приема пищи отдых, а затем построение, теория и практика, и напутственные речи.
Наступило время объединить усилия и накопленный боевой опыт для устранения угроз мирному развитию наших государств. Совместное учение является началом реального, не на словах, а на деле сотрудничества в целях борьбы с международным терроризмом.
Теперь у России и США есть общий враг, и задача военных – отработка эффективных навыков борьбы с ним. Сейчас ВДВшники перенимают опыт американцев, а через год те отправятся в Россию с ответным визитом. Пока же наши изучают в гостях тактические приемы, средства связи и привычное для зеленых беретов вооружение. Ну и, само собой, подрывное дело. Иностранных инструкторов, кстати, поразило, с какой легкостью десантники освоили вроде бы непривычные для них штурмовые винтовки М4 и пистолеты Беретта. С этим же арсеналом россияне показали высокий класс на полигоне, блестяще отстреляв по движущимся мишеням. В ходе неформального соревнования максимальное количество баллов, 83 из 100 возможных, с первой же попытки выбил гвардии сержант Зорик Цыдыпов. Боевые навыки отрабатывают вместе. Это главная задача учений в ходе так называемой активной фазы, которая стартовала сегодня. Двум группам, российской и американской, важно показать, насколько слаженно и сообща они умеют действовать. Учебная спецоперация включает в себя десантирование в горах, разведку, действия по захвату и уничтожению баз террористов. В идеале все должно пройти без сучка, без задоринки. Помимо практического значения, учения носят и символический характер. Военные двух стран говорят, что командировка в Форт Карсон должна наладить взаимопонимание между солдатами, на случай, если им в будущем придется совместно отражать какие-либо угрозы. Евгений Зубков, Александр Двинянинов, телекомпания НТВ.
Another year and another opportunity for two great countries and two police forces to make a difference. For the second year in a row, the League City Police Department has hosted 9 police cadets from China's Zhejiang Police Academy. The cadets are required to complete 4 years of training, including a year-long internship at Sam Houston State University. As a part of their internship, the cadets spent a week with officers from the League City and Alvin Police Departments. League City was chosen to participate in the program for the second year. Police Chief Mike Jez says it's a great opportunity for both League City officers and the Chinese students.
So it's really exciting, I think, for our officers to have an influence on future policymakers and a national police agency that's certainly a world power.
The program focuses on community policing, a practice that League City Police Department is known for.
We wanted to make sure that we had communities that had strong histories of community-oriented policing, as well as communities that were where the police were trusted and had good relationships with the community. And in this area, Alvin and League City both have very long histories of both good, effective community relations, as well as community-oriented policing. So we thought this would be a good fit. Also, quite frankly, the hospitality of the people in those communities was another reason for choosing them.
The students received several hours of classroom training. They took a tour of the Galveston County Courthouse and received a lesson in the American court system from Judge Alani Cox. They also toured the League City Fire Department and had some interaction with fellow emergency workers. As a part of the program, they also received arms training and did ride-alongs with League City police officers to experience community policing firsthand. The cadets aren't only paired with officers for training, they spend 24 hours a day with officers and their families, an experience neither officer nor student will ever forget.
I enjoy a great time in my host families, and the police officers are being so nice, and I had great experience during patrol.
It was just a good experience. Did 2 different cultures coming together. We both learned from each other, and we got a lot out of it. We built a relationship. The cadet we sponsored last year, we actually Facebook with him, email him. He calls us mom and dad, and we still have a good relationship with them. So and this year with Chris, same thing.
So what's the next step?
Probably the next logical step would be to send a delegation of our police officers to China. We're hopeful that that will happen in the near future, and again, we think that these opportunities provide the citizens of League City with a more well-rounded police department and with police officers that are truly prepared to meet their every need.
While the trip may be over for these 9 cadets, the program still continues to educate and enlighten League City Police Department and the cadets from the Zhejiang Police Academy.
Today is the time to say goodbye, but I think it's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning. Thanks, everyone.
A tilt-rotor Osprey that surveys downtown Tampa. And Special Forces operators from different countries assaulting mock enemy positions.
Today's demonstration is being conducted as part of U.S. Special Operations Command International Special Operations Forces Week, or ISOC.
This marked the beginning of a combined combat capabilities demonstration at the International Special Operations Forces Conference in Tampa, Florida. Special forces from 96 countries, including NATO nations, came together for a week-long conference. The event focused on building the Global Special Operations Forces Partnership, with a vision toward forging networks of special forces worldwide.
What we're doing is we're trying to have a new strategic approach to how we employ special operations throughout the world. And we think the best way to do that is partnering with our soft partners globally, having key partners around the world, and then having those regional partners basically do those things required to avoid a regional conflict that might have global implications.
Although special operations are often seen as a prerogative of individual nations, special forces could work together multinationally in many fields.
Special fields such as the counterterrorism actions, intelligence actions, in order to get special operations developed, and indirect actions too. Direct actions are a little bit different, but indirect actions we can help on the piracies, the trafficking, terrorism, subjects like that. We have needs, common needs we must develop.
Boats, assault vehicles, helicopters and other aircraft were involved in the demonstration, as special operators from around the world worked alongside each other in the exercise scenario in which the mayor of Tampa was rescued.
They will execute a hostage rescue mission against fortified enemy position. This assault force consists of personnel from Brazil, Canada, Jordan, Norway, Poland, Thailand, and the United States.
Did you volunteer to be a hostage?
I volunteered to be a hostage. I'm a hostage every day. No, I absolutely volunteered. I wanted to do whatever I could to be a part of this. Obviously, to get the chance to fire a .50 caliber was pretty cool. The ultimate boy toy, but it was a lot of fun. But more importantly, I got to be with these guys, and I got to watch what they do firsthand.
The demonstration went smoothly. Although working together with a variety of international operators could present some basic challenges.
Normally would probably be the language barrier, I guess. It's really hard to communicate and explain ideas and bounce off each other when you're not sure what somebody's saying, I guess. So yeah, that's probably the hardest, yeah.
Working together in a global partnership has many advantages, like burden sharing and having interoperability.
The most important thing you're going to build out of all this is the human network itself, those personal relationships, those things that are going to make things happen when times are difficult, when it's very, very hard. And this really boils down to trust. It's all about trust. If you've got to trust the people, and in order to do that, you've got to work with them, and you've got to have those relationships to give you that trust.
NATO Special Forces already work together and are united in the NSHQ. According to Admiral McRaven, commander of the United States Special Operations Command, this NATO Special Operations headquarters located in Mons, Belgium, serves as the ideal example for a broader and more global network.
Absolutely. This has been one of the great success stories, I think, in special operations in terms of how we have built partnerships. And I think the real lesson learned isn't just about the alliance. Obviously, NATO is a unique alliance that has been in place for a very long time. It is a multinational alliance. So it is a unique framework. However, having said that, I think what's important to recognize is that people came together, folks with common values, with common interests. The NATO SOF headquarters was in a position to be able to teach, to train, to pass common tactics, techniques, and procedures. All of that has paid huge dividends as we have worked together in the NATO alliance and, of course, down in Afghanistan as a NATO force down there.
Right now you have the NATO SOF headquarters, so, which is almost like a model home, for lack of a better term. If you look at where we want to go in the future, we'd like to basically do some of that in other parts of the world. We think the Pacific, Africa, the Americas, and the Middle East all should have something like a NATO SOF headquarters.
And indeed, many countries are seeking ways to extend their international partnerships, just like the NATO Special Operations Forces example.
It's going to be a point we are going to try to develop and see if we can expand this experience. I think it's a good experience, the NATO experience. I hope we can do the same in South America.
As security challenges become more global, the international framework of special forces becomes more and more important. I'm Karsten Reiniers, reporting for the NATO channel from Tampa.
It was an important visit today. For the first time, the Prime Minister was able to see how the relationship is developing between the United States and Singapore. It was a welcoming home at the Mount Home Air Force Base as 200 Singapore airmen and women, plus their families, awaited the arrival of Prime Minister Lee.
We are learning to master the aircraft and the weapon systems. And as we gain greater mastery of the systems, there'll be more which we can do with them and more which we can do together with the U.S. Air Force.
It's been almost a year since the Mount Home Air Force Base partnered with the Republic of Singapore Air Force, known as the Peace Caravan 5. The U.S. already has close ties with Singapore, and now having their gunfighter squadron training here just strengthens those foreign relations.
It's given us the opportunity to train together and to improve our interoperability as we confront the security challenges facing both of our countries around the world.
The island of Singapore is about the size of Rhode Island. Training an entire gunfighter squadron would be difficult there, but here they have all the space they need.
It is truly a special opportunity to have partners come here and train with us on U.S. home soil, and especially here at Mount Home.
Locally, the benefits of cultural diversity within our schools and communities, he says, is just another way to continue to build upon those ties. And this isn't a short-term relationship. The United States Air Force Base and the Republic of Singapore Air Force Base plans to continue this relationship for the next 20 years. In the Satellite Center, Jennifer McGraw, KBOA2 News, watching out for you.
At the request of the United Nations, China has sent 14 peacekeeping forces to Lebanon. On Friday, Chinese peacekeepers marked the International Day of UN Peacekeepers in southern Lebanon, along with 38 national contingents of the UN interim force in the country.
Medical work in the troubled region is never easy, but saving lives on a swinging aircraft reaches a new height of challenging. During their 9-month mission in Mali, the Chinese medics treated more than 60 soldiers and civilians on planes. The total flying hours were up to 135 hours. It was a whole new experience in the history of Chinese peacekeepers. The medics constructed and ran a second-level hospital. The 70 doctors and nurses were responsible for more than 4,700 UN peacekeepers in the eastern cities of Gao and Quito. With limited resources and conditions, they treated 800 patients and completed over 30 surgeries.
And Chinese UN peacekeepers in Liberia will be helping to build an Ebola quarantine and control center in the capital city Monrovia. UN spokesman Stephanie Dujarric made this statement on Tuesday. He said the project would take 21 days to complete. 2 employees of the UN mission in Liberia have died from an Ebola infection and 44 were quarantined as a result. And Dujarric said of these employees, 42 have been cleared after completing their quarantine period, while the other 2 still have to wait until November the 1st. The UN mission said that it conducted immediate and robust contact tracing and quarantine measures after the infection was detected.
中国第13批赴南苏丹维和部队331人今天开始分3个批次到南苏丹瓦乌地区执行维和任务。这支维和部队下辖3个工程保障中队、1个勤务保障中队、1个警卫中队和1个医疗分队，依托济南军区第26集团军和联勤某分部为主组建，近半数官兵有过维和经历。为期8个月的任务中，他们将担负任务区内道路、桥梁、机场和供水供电设施的修建与维护，销毁武器弹药，为战区内其他维和部队提供工程支援等任务。
我们这次维和所面临的形势很严峻，当地的安全局势较为紧张，西非地区的埃博拉病毒肆虐。根据这些复杂情况，我们加强了针对性训练。
维和部队加大了应急防卫演练，针对营区遭遇社会骚乱波及、机动途中遭遇武装分子袭扰、受到武装分子挑衅等多种突发情况，反复进行演练。同时，组织展开战术防卫、精度射击、战场救护、病毒防护等科目的强化训练。
Is in the works along the South Waterfront. What's driving all the investment there? Ken Body is live at the site of the new Hyatt House Hotel. Ken.
Well, this hotel development behind me is just one of several projects going up in and around Portland's waterfront. And in this case, it's an indication that foreign investors are willing to put millions into the Rose City. Here's what it will look like. A 200-room, $53 million Hyatt House Extended Stay Hotel in Portland's River Place district, right next to South Waterfront. Mayor Hales was among those breaking ground.
If it's going to be a complete neighborhood, we need housing, we need commerce, we need hotels, which is what we're getting more of with this project, and soon we'll need a grocery store because it's becoming a neighborhood.
The Hyatt is mostly financed by investors from China. Under a federal initiative called EB-5, foreign nationals can get green cards for them and their families if they invest at least $500,000 in a targeted area and are vetted through U.S. immigration. What would you say to people who say, well, this is people buying citizenship or buying a green card to America? Is that how you see it?
No, I don't think so.
Selinka Zhao represents Chinese investing in the U.S. and Canada.
The purpose for them is to want to send their kids to America because Americans' education and university is so well known in the world.
The Hyatt is just one of many new developments, including apartments and retailers going in and around South Waterfront. The biggest development in the history of Portland. It stalled several years ago in the down economy. I talked to developer Homer Williams, who told me he was still confident even then.
We always felt that this was going to be the future for Portland down here.
And that future is now, with streetcar and tram connections, children playing, and new residents moving in.
And for us to be at a point where it's starting in to watch, coming new into the state, and still feeling like we're part of something that's starting up is great.
Of course, OHSU, Oregon Health and Science University, has a huge presence down here around South Waterfront, and that's one of the things that's driving development as well. Now, in terms of what's going to happen here in the future, Mayor Hale says that he's looking for affordable housing in this neighborhood, as well as that grocery store that the resident was talking about. He says those are both things that the city is working on. Live at River Place, Ken Boddy, Queen 6 News.
And the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is taking over, with first movers, the United Kingdom, Britain, followed by France, Germany, more U.S. allies soon to come. In fact, over the weekend, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and World Bank, Christine Lagarde, I've heard some people call her Kristen, but I'm pretty sure it's Christine Lagarde or Kristen, doesn't really matter, expecting to join with this Asian Economic Union, the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Again, a direct counterpoint to the long-dominated Western-backed, U.S.-backed IMF and World Bank, which has been the loan shark for decades. And the AIIB, really, in becoming the new loan shark, will also become the new global reserve currency, a move away from the dollar. You see, this is no longer conspiracy theory, folks, anymore. It's no longer a theory. It's no longer the tinfoil hats telling you this is going to happen, that the U.S. dollar will lose its reserve status. This is an actual fact. It's coming from the Wall Street Journal. It's coming from CNBC. It's coming from Forbes. And the United States of America doesn't like it. The United States of America is losing its grip on power. Now, again, I've covered this extensively. We talked about this last week with the move from the Fed. You know, this illusion of markets that they've created, these 0% interest rates, trillions of dollars of money spent, these huge moves in our currency market. In fact, for those of you that are currency traders, and I'm not a currency trader, the currency markets move in, I believe, pips, 0.01% per day. Those are big moves. We're not seeing pip movements, 0.01% on a daily basis. We've been seeing full percentage point moves in the market. The dollar collapsed over the past several days. Post the comments, after it's been moving parabolically, post the comments coming from Janet Yellen and the Federal Reserve. These are currency movements. These are currency wars, unlike things that we've ever seen in history.
We're going to be seeing military evacuations of San Francisco, up and down the peninsula, the East Bay. I mean, it's going to be a very big drama that we're all going to be involved in, whether you live here or not, because it's going to be on the television 24/7. So we're all going to be living this. Especially that first week is going to be a week of mourning for the whole entire nation. And I kind of, if these things do unfold the way I've seen them, thank God for that 7-point earthquake, because the 8-point earthquake that follows a few months later is so severe that it completely destroys the San Francisco Bay Area. And if we hadn't had that earlier earthquake and people hadn't gotten out of there, we would have seen a lot more death. It would have been a lot more horrifying. And it's within months after that that the Chinese start coming in through the West Coast and begin their invasion. You know, I see it up and down all over. The hot spots are California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Idaho is on the edge there, and Arizona is on the edge there. And those are areas that they're going to capture and claim, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere in those locations when they begin their invasion. You know, the Russians and the Chinese are going to start with a bang. It's not going to be anything. I've seen most Americans not even knowing why we're being attacked or who's attacking us. You know, breathe easy for the next year more than likely, because they're very patient. You know, they need to build that case up, and they've been very patient since 9/11 and allowed America to basically make an ass of itself across the world, so that when they do attack us, they can be the heroes and they can justify their reasons for attacking us. I don't like to even talk about or even post on the internet, but you know, as far as the Middle East is concerned, and I mean, America's not going to say anything about that because they don't want to threaten us. That's why they're not going to tell us this satellite deal is part of the missile shield and part of letting China and Russia know that they'll knock their satellites out if they dare attack us as well. I mean, that's too scary to talk about. That's why we need people like you, so that we can talk about this stuff. But I see it starting with a missile attack. I just see us one day as Americans waking up and seeing that we're being bombarded by conventional missiles, especially on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. And I see these missile attacks as very precise and hitting government installations. I see it being very clean. I see it scaring us, and especially people that live along the East Coast, and so they're all packing up their cars and driving and flooding the highways. We already have a mass exodus that's going on from the West Coast, and we also have like FEMA and our troops on the West Coast because of the disasters and everything that's going on there. So it's kind of the beginning, and I think they're just going to watch us fall apart internally before the troops actually come in, because the troops are going to be called quote-unquote peacekeepers, and they'll be Russian-led, but most of the troops will be Chinese, so it'll be both Russians and Chinese coming in. And they'll be coming up to Americans saying, you know, our way is a better way. They have a plan, and if you follow our way, everything will be good for you. And it will be. You know, they'll take you in and they'll give you a little implant in your hand that'll have cash value that you can build your new life with. And so it'll be very seductive, and it'll seem very, very peaceful to some people. Of course, other people aren't going to go for that, especially people that are going to, you know, see that as a mark of the beast and a scary anti-Christian thing to do. And they'll be in for it. They'll go into the prison camps. They'll get the retinal eye scanners to ID who they are and in their system, and just keep them locked up. And again, those are the states that I mentioned that I wouldn't want to be in: California and Oregon and Washington.
Yeah. In the meantime, where do you see our government?
Fighting really hard. I mean, first they're going to withdraw from overseas, so they're going to withdraw from the Middle East. There is this policy that's going to be out there about nuclear weapons, because people think MAD is what keeps this from happening. But Russia has been saying, and China has been saying for a while now, and they'll make it quite clear when they declare war on America, that if the first country that uses a nuke in this war will receive the entire stockpile of Russia and China right back in response. And so nobody's going to want to do that. So they'll withdraw completely out of the Middle East except for Israel, and they'll want Israel to use one of their nukes to help deal with what's going on in there. But our troops are going to come home to defend the homeland, and they're going to set up along the Rocky Mountains, and that's why I don't see them getting any farther. They're getting into California and Nevada, but they're not getting much past that. And that's because our boys, not only the people that are trained, but even armed civilians are fighting back, and I never really see them winning. I just see this gruesome aspect in California and states like that. And I also see a gruesome aspect along the Mississippi River from our own evils as Americans. There are some greedy, evil Americans out there, and they're going to congregate along the Mississippi River Valley for whatever reason and be violent on each other. And so there is this safe zone along the Rocky Mountains, and it's just east of the Rocky Mountains where the good people are, where the fighters are there, the fathers with guns who are willing to protect their wives, and all the people that are kind of being gathered together by the Creator.